everyone, my name's Shaine. I'm a dramatherapist and I work in the NHS in an adult learning disability community service. So now I'm going to move on to the dramatherapy case study. So because of client confidentiality in our sessions, the details in this case study are made up, but the case study, although it's not inspired by or based on a real person, these are themes that we see commonly in our service. So I've kind of informed the case study using that. So Scarlett is a 22-year-old autistic woman with a mild learning disability. She lives alone in a flat with one-to-one carers visiting once per day. And she has a diagnosis of mixed anxiety and depressive disorder. So Scarlett has a very small support system. She moved between foster placements since the age of 4, so her childhood was quite fragmented. And she doesn't know her biological family, and she's had no contact with previous foster families. So all of the people that were involved in her really formative years when she was developing, she no longer sees or has contact with. She also experienced a history of abuse and neglect throughout her childhood, and that's led to her now experiencing some difficulties with forming and developing relationships. She's had difficulties with isolation and self-neglect. She also has some tendencies of hoarding, and she has a lot of anxiety on a day-to-day basis. She also experiences some difficulties with her identity, who she is, and what she wants for herself. So the first step would be that we would receive Scarlett's referral as a team, and then we would meet her for a pre-assessment just to kind of hear from her words a bit about her life now and maybe some of her history as well. And that kind of determines if we think we would be able to support Scarlett and offer her some therapy. So once that outcome's been decided, we would offer drama therapy, one-to-one sessions, and then the therapist would complete a form and complete the process whilst Scarlett is on the waiting list. Then once Scarlett's got to the top of the waiting list, she would attend the assessment sessions before committing to any further therapy. So as I said earlier, that gives her a chance to try it out and to see if we could work well together. And then the therapist would complete the assessment report and set some goals with Scarlett and schedule further therapy. So Scarlett has a mild learning disability, so goals setting might be something she can engage in. But if not, that might be something that we consider with the support system or the service users, carers or family. And then once we're in drama therapy sessions, they would happen once a week on the same day at the same time, in the same room and with the same therapist. So there's a lot of consistency. They would be up to 50 minutes, so whatever felt manageable for Scarlett. They'd be confidential, so it wouldn't be discussed outside of our sessions unless Scarlett gave consent for that. And we would review the therapy regularly to ensure that it's still beneficial for Scarlett to attend, to see if there was anything that could be changed in the room to help Scarlett. So in drama therapy, although it's called drama therapy, so it kind of implies that we do a lot of acting. There's so many things that we do. So we use different ways of playing. So that might be kind of using our bodies to play, to act things out. But it also might be like imagination. It might be exploring different characters in our hands, for example. We also use a lot of movement, so it might just be expressing ourselves through our body, which a lot of people have never experienced before. So it's a nice way of releasing some of the emotions that are stored in our body. We also use a lot of stories and metaphors, characters and personification. And in those stories, we might act things out, but we also might just think about the characters and think about how those characters relate to us or don't relate to us. So it's an opportunity for people to explore roles that they already feel they fit into, but also roles that they've never experienced before and would like to experience. So, you know, someone who's quite shy might want to imagine what it's like to be a king and to have lots of power. We might do some talking. There's a lot of talking in our sessions, or vocalization. So that could be singing, but it also could just be any form of expression using your voice. We might listen to music or make sound together, make music together, or we might do some drawing and writing to express ourselves. So any form of creativity to express what's going on inside is welcome in drama therapy. So treatment and support. So there's lots of ways that I might consider working with Scarlett, but as she's someone who experiences a lot of anxiety, she might be a person who would like to start really small in drama therapy. Acting something out or using our bodies might just feel too overwhelming at the moment for Scarlett. So we might start really small with these stones and crystals that you can see here. And we might just start by simply thinking about, if we were a stone or a crystal, which one we would be. And if Scarlett is able to do that, we might also think about which stones and crystals our family might be, or other people in our lives. And that gives us a bit of an insight into how Scarlett sees herself, but also sees the people around her, who's important to her. So if she chose that the big one that's quite dull, that implies a certain way that Scarlett might be feeling, versus something, a crystal that's small and shiny and sparkly. We might use the picture cards that you can see. So those kind of, again, give us an insight into how Scarlett might be feeling about a certain subject. So we might say, how did that thing make you feel, that event or that person? But it might just be, which card are you drawn to today? Which one feels like something you want to explore today? So we can start small, or we can go bigger depending on how Scarlett's engaging in the session. And then we also have some puppets that we might use, and I've found puppets can offer a really nice way of sometimes talking about things can feel too difficult. So using puppets can sometimes be a bit easier. Maybe it's the pig's feelings that we're considering rather than our own, and that can just feel easier for someone who finds it difficult to talk, or who isn't able to talk about whatever the reason they were referred is. There's other things we might use. So we've got some sensory objects. Some of these offer a really nice way to become present and to just notice what we're feeling, physically, but also internally. But also sometimes I use a lot of bubbles in my session. Bubbles are a really nice way of breathing and finding a way to regulate that breath, which can become really tense and stored up inside our body. We might use stories again. So again, thinking about the characters in the story or the places in the story. And sometimes we might respond to that story by writing something or drawing something, or just offering some words to one of the characters in the story. What would we say to them if we could help them? Or we might write our own story. We have these kind of Russian nesting dolls, but pictured is the animal version. And sometimes that offers a way of thinking about which things inside us feel smaller, which things feel bigger, or also which parts of us are more present at the moment. Sometimes it's like the really tiny little monkey that feels the biggest part of us at the moment. So that helps us to explore identity and the roles, which is something Scarlett's struggling with in her referral. We have a sand tray here, but we also could use the doll's house for a similar purpose. So the sand tray, again, offers us a way of externalizing what's internal. So it might be that we could say to Scarlett, show me in the sand how that anxiety feels. And she could make a physical representation of that rather than talking about it. Or if that feels a bit too close to home or a bit too difficult for Scarlett, we could say, show me in the sand how that character felt, or how it would feel if someone were to do this. So again, keeping those prompts either as close or as distant as they need to be to help Scarlett to feel comfortable expressing whatever's going on internally. And also finally, we might use some therapeutic letter writing. So writing a letter to the characters in the story or to a certain part of ourselves. So it might be dear anxiety, or it might be dear mum, for example. So there's so many different ways that we can use all of the resources, and none of them are right or wrong. They just adapt to Scarlett's needs in the room. So we have a very large multidisciplinary team, and there's so many teams that we could refer to if Scarlett and her support felt necessary, and if I felt necessary. For Scarlett, she might not need speech and language therapy. She might be someone who's able to speak about things quite clearly, and she's not having any difficulties from what we know of her referral with swallowing. So speech and language therapy might not be for her. She might find that she would like to be referred to psychiatry for some medication, in which case that's something we could consider together. And if she were to go on medication, that could either be reviewed regularly by psychiatry, or she might have a community nurse come out and visit her and see how she's getting on at home, and they would also help with that medication. We could refer Scarlett to occupational therapy. For me, that feels like the most appropriate for Scarlett, because occupational therapy might be able to just come out, assess her space, and assess how she could be better supported in her living environment, as Scarlett is someone who has a history of self-neglect, isolation, and hoarding. Occupational therapy might help her to build the confidence and the skills that she may wish to have to go out in the community more, or to just be safer in her living environment, or more comfortable in her living environment. She might access psychology. Usually, if someone's accessing psychology, they might not come to arts therapies because they work in different ways. But that is something, if Scarlett didn't feel drama therapy was working for her, maybe she would prefer a place where she can talk more instead of expressing herself through creativity. And then there's the enhanced support team who, if Scarlett was really struggling at home and there was a lot of difficult things going on for her, they might be someone that we can consider who just have a little bit more ability to support Scarlett through those really, really intense, difficult moments when she's not in her therapy sessions, as therapy isn't a crisis service. It would be once a week. So outcomes. We would hope that Scarlett has taken some steps towards her goals, whatever those goals were. That would be, we would consistently be working on those and thinking about those in the therapy. And it might not be that Scarlett's always thinking about those, but I, as the therapist, would always have them in my mind and always be thinking about the journey towards those goals, and they might change as well. I would hope that Scarlett would have some improved presentation. So by presentation, I mean how she first came into the space might have been really, really small, and she might have found it really difficult to come away from the table because her anxiety was so intense. She might have been isolating a lot at home, and hopefully over time, Scarlett felt a bit more confident to use the space, to use the resources, but also externally from therapy, maybe she would become a bit less isolated. She might feel a bit more confident to go to the shops or to access another activity or something in her week. I would hope that she would have some more insight into some of her past experiences and feelings. So some of those difficult experiences that I detailed in her referral, she might just be a bit more aware of how they have contributed to the way that she's feeling today. And awareness helps us to be a little bit less hard on ourselves sometimes. If we know why it is that we do certain things, then we know that it's not just that we can't do it, it's that there was a reason that caused us to get to that point. And hopefully a bit more insight into how she's actually feeling, because as someone who's very anxious and isolated, it might be tempting to kind of numb herself from those feelings and ignore them, or she might become really immersed in those feelings and it might feel too overwhelming. So either easing some of those feelings or becoming a bit more aware of them and leaning into them a bit. She might be able to process some of those memories and experiences a bit better to help her to move through them and work through them. And I always remind my service users that we're not thinking about getting over them and ignoring them, but just working through them and helping our brain to work through them and move past them as well, even though they'll never leave us. And then hopefully Scarlett would become more empowered to make changes where possible. So she might feel a bit more empowered to give someone a phone call, someone in her life, or she might feel a bit more confident to go out and go to an activity or a day service or ask for support somewhere else. So any form of empowerment that Scarlett can have over her own life and her own autonomy feels really important, especially as she only has one-to-one carers helping her with her care. Okay, so for more information, you could visit the British British Association of Dramatherapy, where you'll see information about all different types of dramatherapy in the NHS and elsewhere, what we do, and who we might work with. You could also visit the NHS Health Careers Dramatherapy page, which is more specific to the role of a dramatherapist in the NHS and also advertises jobs. And you could also visit the NHS England videos on YouTube. There's one called What is Dramatherapy? And one called What is it like to experience dramatherapy, which gives a view from the service users themselves. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I hope you have enjoyed it.